So good day everyone, and welcome to another Warframe video. So today's video is the fourth in the series of augment mods, and for today I would like to focus on Banshee and her augment mod, Resonance. Now, Resonance augments Banshee's second ability, Sonar, and unlike a lot of other augment mods for other frames, which gives additional capability to the ability that it's augmenting, Resonance doesn't particularly give any additional capability to Sonar, but what it does is it makes Sonar a much more complete ability. Now, many players who often utilize Banshee will tell you that Sonar is one of her more preferred abilities. It gives a lot of capability and a lot of usefulness in missions, and because of that, Resonance, by completing its capability, makes Banshee a lot more utility-oriented frame. Now, from my perspective, I have often used Banshee off and on, but the moment I got Resonance, I found that Banshee became a lot more utility-oriented, and now she is one of my more preferred frames. Now, as you know, Banshee is the sonic warframe, and as such, all her abilities are sound-based. Now, because they are sound-based, similar to Nyx and Zephyr, Banshee's abilities aren't the most intuitive. None of her abilities are majorly offensive abilities or defensive abilities that will make her a tank. And because they are not the easiest abilities to understand, many players, especially new players, don't particularly have Banshee as their preferred frame to obtain. You never really hear new players say, I want to get Banshee as their next frame. They usually focus their efforts on frames such as Rhino or Valkyrie, Inaros or Atlas, maybe Necros, but you never really hear Banshee as one of the more preferred frames, and that's unfortunate because many of her abilities are quite unique. So if we take a look at Banshee's abilities, as mentioned before, all her abilities are sound-based. And so her first ability, Sonic Boom, is a force-style ability. It will send out a shockwave that will push away many of the nearby enemies. And for lower-level enemies, if it pushes hard enough, then it could kill them. Her second ability is Sonar, and Sonar does two things. It first identifies all of the nearby enemy and their location, and second, it highlights all of the enemy's weak spots so that if you shoot at those areas, it will take them down faster. Now, Silence is, as the name implies, is a sound muffling ability. It first stuns the enemy for a short period of time, and then later on, it reduces their ability to be able to hear nearby sounds. Of course, that makes Banshee a little bit good for stealth sort of capability, although nowhere near as good as Ivara, Ash, or Loki. And finally, Soundquake is area effect, and it will send out a continuous shock wave to the nearby area so that first of all anybody nearby will fall over, and then if they get shaken hard enough they'll receive damage, and you can take out lower level enemies with this one ability. So at first glance, Banshee's first three abilities seem somewhat lackluster, and none of the three abilities seems to stand out as really capable abilities, so many players who often get Banshee in the beginning focus their attention on the fourth ability, Soundquake. And I do admit, Soundquake is quite a useful ability. It has good crowd control and area effects, and it can be useful in missions such as defense, especially against the infestation. However, as people start using Banshee, they realize that her second ability, Sonar, is very useful, not only in the ability to identify where the enemy are, but also because it makes Banshee's attacks far more devastating when she hits the enemy's weak spots. So to give an example, let's take Banshee and have her do a slugfest against a level 40 corrupted heavy gunner using a Quanta Vandal that's actually modded for radiation rather than corrosive, so it's not a good weapon to use, and as you can see in a slugfest she would lose. Now under the same situation with the same weapon, if you were to use Sonar and do that, then even though the weapon is still not particularly suited for a corrupted heavy gunner, she would have a much better chance of taking her down, and she does take her down in this situation. Okay, so another example of this, same corrupted level 40 heavy gunner and the same Quanta Vandal with radiation, and if you hit the weak spot exactly, she goes down really fast. And this brings us to one of the major limitations in Sonar. Since Sonar casts a relatively small area for the weak spot in the enemy, if you don't hit that weak spot properly, even if you cast the ability, you won't get any benefit from it. So if one was to look at the pros and cons of Sonar, the pro would be that it would make Banshee a far more formidable Warframe by making the enemy far weaker. And because this is independent of any weapon and it makes any weapon stronger, this is a major plus for Banshee. In addition, since Sonar is an area effect, it affects all the enemies that are within the area when the ability is cast. And this not only is a benefit for Banshee, but also if she is in a mission with a group, it affects or is advantageous to all the other team members as well, since they can kill the enemy far easier with Sonar on. So Banshee becomes a far more valuable member of any team that goes into hard fighting missions. Now as for the con, as mentioned before, since Sonar casts a relatively small area in the enemy's body where it is weak, if you do not precisely hit the enemy at that weak spot, you will not get any benefit from Sonar. In addition, since Sonar creates these weak spots only during the casting time, any new enemies that come in after Sonar has been cast will not be affected and will not have any weak spots. And this greatly reduces the effectiveness of Sonar in its default state. And so this finally brings us to Resonance. And what Resonance does is it augments Sonar such that whenever you kill an enemy by shooting at a weak spot, Resonance will trigger another Sonar event that will last the remaining duration of the original Sonar that you cast. So what this means is that by killing enemies by shooting at their weak spot, new enemies that come in will be affected by the additional instances of Sonar that are triggered by the killing of these enemies. In addition, these additional Sonar events stack, so any enemy who is already affected by Sonar and has weak spots will have additional weak spots identified with every Sonar event that is created. So if you kill enough enemies and create more Sonar events, you could literally cover an entire enemy's body with weak spots. And this of course makes hitting the enemy's weak spots much easier when the surface area of their entire body is covered with weak spots. So in order to test Resonance out, it's best to take Banshee into an actual battle rather than a simulation so that she could have the chance to have an endless supply of a large number of enemies coming after her. Now of course an endless supply of a large number of enemies will indicate a survival mission, so I chose Annie in the Void to test Resonance out. Okay, so here we are about a little bit over 20 minutes into the survival mission, and Banshee just casts Silence, her third ability, and then Sonar. And what you see is that the enemy are covered in all these glowing pink areas, and those are the weak spots that are created by Sonar and Resonance. And in this case, of course, it's pink because that is the color of Banshee's energy. Now it turns out that Silence, Sonar, and Resonance really complement each other well, because Silence will temporarily stun all the enemy, and that gives you the ability to cast Sonar without too much of a problem. And then of course it also keeps the enemy from moving for a short period of time, so that it makes it easier to shoot them down and focus on the weak spots. Since Silence is a fast casting spell, it works perfectly with Sonar, which is a slower casting spell, to temporarily incapacitate the enemy while you're casting Sonar. And this is very vital for Banshee, especially because of the fact that she is a really squishy frame. She doesn't have good shield, she doesn't have great health, and she has terrible armor. So being able to incapacitate the enemy with Silence so that you could cast Sonar is really crucial for Banshee. Now, if Banshee were not to have Resonance in her arsenal, then the difference will be that instead of having a whole bunch of pink glowing weak spots, each enemy will only have one small pink region to aim for. And this becomes, of course, very difficult for Banshee because of the fact that Banshee is such a squishy frame. She has to constantly be moving. She can't stop to really aim at the enemy. And so being able to have multiple instances of Sonar, which creates a huge number of areas in the enemy's body for weak spots, helps her out immensely to being able to take them down. Okay, so we have fast forwarded to about the 45-minute mark of the survival mission, and at this point, as you can still see, Resonance is making all of the enemy's bodies completely pink. And this not only becomes an advantage at this point, but it becomes an absolute necessity, because the enemy have become high enough that it becomes really difficult to kill them without being able to have Resonance on. And of course, with Banshee being a squishy frame, she does continuously have to avoid being hit, especially for these higher enemies who have much more formidable weapons. And so Resonance and Sonar becomes crucial for Banshee to be able to complete a mission like Survival for an extended period of time. Okay, so in the end, this mission ended a few seconds shy of 50 minutes, which was unfortunate, but I got so carried away I forgot to turn on the last life pod before the time ran out, and I had to beeline to extraction. But what I wanted to say was, without Resonance, I wouldn't have been able to come even close to being able to run this mission for such a long period of time. Finally, with regards to the availability of Resonance, you could get Resonance from one of the two syndicates in the game. The mod is available from both the Perrin Sequence as well as Cephalon Suda, and if you were a member of either one of the syndicates, you have to be a rank of Genius or higher to be able to purchase this from Cephalon Suda, or you have to be a rank of Partner or higher to be able to get it from Perrin Sequence. Now, as mentioned before, I'm not a member of any of these syndicates, so I always get my augment mods through the trading channel. So in the end, if you're the type of player who does not like utilizing Banshee for their missions, then Resonance may not really change your mind. However, if you're a player who does like utilizing Banshee, and especially likes her for her Sonar, then Resonance can significantly improve that capability such that it will make your gameplay a lot more enjoyable. As for me, since I do like Banshee and taking her on missions, and since I do like her especially for Sonar, I found that Resonance was a very valuable addition to Banshee's mod arsenal. In any case, that's it for this particular video. I hope you found this to be enjoyable and informative. If you have any comments, please post them in the comments section below. It's always a pleasure to make these videos for you, and thank you very much for watching this video. I will continue on to make more Warframe videos in the future, and until that time, Jaya, nice day everyone.